wanna stay ahead of the curve, then follow my words. All we doing, these train, innovate, solve, yeah. These train, innovate, solve. If you wanna be ahead of the curve, then follow my words.
Good evening, good evening, good evening, everyone. It's a TTIS where we build confident, empowered educators through empathy, strategy, and practical tools that you can use today. Tonight's conversation is centered around, before you get back to studying again, let's address your confidence. Matter of fact, do you trust yourself enough to pass? This is a topic that is near and dear to my heart because I see so many people struggling to try to make themselves get back to studying, try to will themselves back into a routine, only to kind of not address some of the questions that they're saying or statements that they're saying to themselves. Things like, you're not smart enough. You don't have the time. But I really want to get into, do you trust yourself? So this session is not about content tonight. It's about the part of passing your exam that most people avoid. And that's your confidence level. And in addressing that, it'll lead us to many places tonight. And so let's go ahead and jump right into it. My 4 goals for today. 1, why does confidence matter? I kind of talked a little bit about that already, but I'll go a little deeper. The story that you're telling yourself. 3 confidence myths that I've identified. There's plenty of them, but I'm going to only focus on 3. And then getting out of that loop that often happens as you go along. So the best way or best description that I can give to confidence is that it really is the engine. It's the power source of you getting to where you're trying to be. And I will say that the steering wheel is the strategy. And I think that it's notable that these things are something that you really need to understand in order to get the momentum that you're trying to get. When confidence is low, studying becomes like a punishment instead of being productive. And for alternative certification teachers, confidence sometimes dips. And that's a normal thing. But it's not proof that there's something wrong with you or wrong, period. When you try to study while feeling defeated, you retain less. I mean, probably quitting earlier, and then there's this stop and start cycle that goes over and over again. But tonight I want to interrupt that cycle so that studying becomes something that you can do and not something that you necessarily dread. Most of the teachers that I work with, I can say this with confidence, are brilliant women. They're juggling families, their work, and a dream they probably have carried for years. But somewhere along the way, as that doubt, it moved in, and it's trying to take up residence. You might feel like less intelligent for not passing yet. You might be telling yourself, if we're meant to be, I'd be a teacher. I would have passed by now. Those are some of the things that I've heard some people kind of explain away when they're talking to me about their program. Or wonder if maybe you should do something else. I'm imagining that you are strolling online, Well, you're not seeing people who will say, I get it. I've been you. You're being pushed programs, you're being pushed documents, you're being pushed like resources, I will say that, but not necessarily somebody who gets it. So I'm here tonight to tell you I get it. I've been there, not in the form of passing an exam. I'm honest about that all the time, but in feeling ill-equipped, maybe second guessing along the journey. And I want to help you to get past some of the phrases that might be lingering out there or even in your head. And that's that you're not behind. You're not a failure. The game is not necessarily over, you know, but you may be in a head spin. And I really want to change that today. So I pause. I'm taking a pause within my training to address some of these mental checkpoints that sometimes we don't address. These things that are weighing on our hearts and our minds that we don't necessarily attend to, but they're there and they're very real in some ways. And we have to talk about them. And one of the ways that I want to kind of do that tonight is with just a mini checkpoint. Asking you a few questions that will help you to kind of gauge where you are. Because when we assess where we are, we can then move from that point to the next point. Of course, I'm going to talk to you about how briefly, but definitely getting an idea of where you are. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you trust yourself to pass this exam? What's the real reason that that number isn't higher? Has fear crept in? Has shame crept in? Have some self-doubt, maybe even fatigue? Have any of those things kind of come your way to slow you down, to knock you off, or divert your pathway? Over the last couple of years, I've seen people that have started this journey as far back as 2017. And I don't judge them for what has happened in between that time. I'm just helping you get back to where you can accomplish your goal. And then my other question is, what have you accomplished recently that gives you yourself credit, that you're giving yourself credit for? Sometimes we don't give ourselves credit. I often have talked on my channel about small wins because I really think that they matter. And they don't just matter just for the statement that small wins matter, but they matter because they're the ones that are creating the momentum to get you where you're trying to go. And I know that sometimes when I'm on the channel, I might not say anything to kind of prompt you to put some statements in the chat, because I know that there's a very, very true fears that are roaming around. But I encourage you tonight to put some of those things in the chat so we can speak to it, so that I can speak back to it, the positives that need to come out of it. Because they're not necessarily where you're trying to hang your hat. They're not at all true. So I want to address some of these things that are not true. These that I'll call myths that often creep up and overtake us. Sometimes overtake, sometimes, as I said before, divert, sometimes lead us to a different path, sometimes stall progress. And one of those myths is, if I failed it before, I'll fail it again. No. Failing once means the strategy is off, not your capability. This belief is inaccurate because failing an exam does not predict future failure. It just doesn't. It predicts misalignment. And most alternative certification educators who don't pass the first time or the first attempt or even the first couple of attempts experience some of the things that I'm going to list. I'm just going to list them. I could talk in great depth about them, but one of them is studying content without understanding how the questions are constructed. Now, I went in there, I took this test. I didn't know how this stuff was constructed. Maybe I'm overstudying weaker domains that are not going to yield me the points that I need. And that's like getting back to the blueprint that I talk about in some of my training. You don't know the blueprint itself. You've never looked at the blueprint or of your exam. Then you're already a little bit behind. Maybe you told yourself that memorizing vocabulary is the best approach, but you haven't applied that vocabulary to various scenarios. This inconsistent studying due to, you're fatigued, you're tired. This back and forth, like, oh, I'll get started. I kind of equated to, when it's the first of the year, it's January, right? It's the first month of the year. And oftentimes, if we have this struggle with whatever we're trying to change, be it your weight, be it the way you are attentive to certain things, whatever it might be, there's all these things that we try that now we're start, and there's this idea of this failure. But it could be fatigue, it could be guilt, it could be feeling overwhelmed. All of these are reasons or things that come up in our head. And then my biggest, and not just because I have a program, but because it's the truth. We sometimes prepare in isolation. We don't get feedback. We don't get a strategy check. I'm a believer of having a coach. I have a coach myself, so I believe in having someone that has been somewhere you're trying to get or can help you to get to the keys to where you're trying to get. But truly, all of those things that I just said, they're not about your intelligence or even about your effort. It's about the approach. And then the second myth that we have on the screen right now is other teachers pass faster. It's this comparison. I haven't quite memorized the statement, but I know that when we compare ourselves, we're still in joy. We're still in our confidence. But honestly, you don't see their behind the scenes. This myth often shows up very easily, and it doesn't start in a classroom. It actually starts social media wise, and the group chats that you put in, passing comments that you've seen, like, I passed it my first try. Great, excellent. I was one of those people, but I don't, I don't struggle with testing either. And, these are just phrases that you come across, and then you start to build on those things. And stuff like, I only studied 2 weeks. Once I figured it out, it was easy. And it might be easy for them. But for some, these statements right here land harder because you're already carrying internal pressure. But and then I want to build another backdrop that often some alternative certification teachers might have. This is not necessarily your first career. You are a career changer. Might be older than your peers. You're still balancing the family, your work, the emotional labor that happens in being in a classroom from day to day. So when you hear someone else pass faster, oftentimes our brain kind of fills in the story, and it's often not right. You'll say things like, they must be smarter. They must have more time than me. Something must be wrong with me. And these conclusions feel very personal, but they're based on partial information, which makes it a lie, makes it a myth. And then my third myth, confidence comes from content mastery. Confidence comes from clarity, structure, and support. And I'm going to say that again. It comes from clarity, structure, and support. This content mastery, it grows from these things. It's not produced alone. It doesn't produce confidence by itself. While it's very important, I'm not going to dumb it down. The content mastery is important. It's not the source of your confidence, or it shouldn't be. Confidence is not necessarily built by you knowing everything. It's built by you knowing what to do with what you know. And without strategy and without structure and strategy, a few things could be happening. You're feeding yourself a lot of content that can increase cognitive load. Your brain starts to struggle to retrieve information under pressure. It's already under pressure. This test is timed, it's long. Your endurance might be wavering. All of those things are happening. And then knowledge, this increase in, I got to feed myself. I got to get all of this information in me. If I have fragments of it and I don't understand how it's integrated, it's going to cause anxiety. And that anxiety can show up on test days. This is why teachers can know the material, but still freeze up, still might be second guessing themselves, and most definitely sometimes underperform. So I want to build a little bit of clarity tonight. And that's why I started with the title that I started with. Before you study again, choose one lane. Whether that lane is vocabulary and context, competency practice that you're going through, that's where my company does very well. Whether it's full-length exams or domain breakdowns, pick a lane. And when you pick this lane, it becomes doable. Your momentum can then grow from the movement that you're making toward effective practices and situating yourself and your lifestyle, your life timing. This all will build confidence. So if I'm studying with confidence, it's unlike pouring water into a bucket with holes, because that's, to me, is what sometimes that's the visual that I can come up with. All of this that we're dumping in, all of this, the water being the content, I'm dumping all this content into me. Don't quite understand it, haven't framed it right, but there's holes in my bucket of understanding. So I want to give you a mini activity to help you to focus on a micro win. And that is, what is one action that you will complete in the next 10 minutes that nudges you closer to passing? Something like reviewing 10 vocabulary terms. I'm going to keep saying in context to what you're talking about. Not only just knowing what it means, but understanding how it relates to the information that you are acquiring or the subject matter itself. Rewatch one of your domain reviews. There is a particular practice that I've seen people use. Every time I talk to them and ask them about what materials they have, they're using this one company. And I'm not against the company, but I am against the fact that it doesn't allow you just to pinpoint the need you have, but that you have to go through the entire thing. And I know that they're doing it in an effort to fill gaps. But that's one of the things that I've noticed. And then complete one competency practice question. These are those tiny wins that help you to rebuild trust in yourself. And over time, tiny wins lead to small and mighty production. So we've gone through these myths. gone through ways in which you can build your confidence, or I'm not going to say to build your confidence, but to notice the ways in which your confidence is being torn down. Now I want to go into the building of your confidence, the getting out of this loop, this practice, this way of not building on what you already have on your foundation, but a way that has been tearing us down. And with that, I start with this question. Name one fear about that you have about this exam that you have to take. And I'm based here in Texas, but this conversation is about any certification exam that you're trying to take. Just one fear. Name that one. And I want to help you to reframe it. I don't, as I've said before in my conversations about confidence and reframing things, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a counselor of any kind, but I'm using methods with you that work with me, work with my clients. I'm very proud of our 96% passing rate. And looking forward to those 4% that have worked with us before to achieve their goal. As I tell my clients that come in, we're about you passing. So we're going to keep going, give you the strategies that you need in order to pass your certification exam. But let's reframe a few. One of them is, I'm afraid of failing again. Let's reframe that. That I intend to have strategic practice so that my next attempt is different. Using this one, I'm afraid I don't have enough time. This is one I use often. I intend to honor my 30 minutes today. My suggestion is always 30 minutes a day, especially if you have this timeline that you've built. And I do suggest that you have a timeline. But if you intend to honor what you said you were going to try to do in practical terms, 2-3 hours a day studying, we don't have time for that. We have busy lives. We're not in college anymore. Scrap that whole idea. But replace it with things that actually fit your life. If you have a planning period where you know you're typically not having to do 1,000 different things, use that time. If you're sitting in the pickup line to pick up your kids, use that time. This is practical ways in which you can get your studying in to build the framework that you need to have in order to pass the contents. And then my one that I started with, how to replace it, to reframe it. If I fail before, I'll fail again. Let's scrap that thought altogether and go with this exam is not testing my worth, who I am as a person. It's testing alignment. Remove the personal attack so that you can focus on what really is the issue. And the issue could be so many different things. So getting out of this loop, it requires us to have conversations with ourselves, to reflect on the practices that we are doing, to remove the personal attack of having failed this exam, or even the mountain of taking it. I've had some clients that they haven't taken it yet, and they've already filled their minds with certain things. So I hope this session helps you breathe again, helps you to move on confidently with the structure, putting structure and strategy in place. Because with it, it's impossible for you not to achieve your goal. I want you to be able to imagine what will happen when all of these things click together for you to get to your goal. So I want to offer you and invite you to a walk through the competencies. It's a session that we have coming up this coming Thursday at 6 p.m. I'm going to hold you about 45 minutes to talk with you and walk you through a competency, just like we do, give you a preview of what it would be like to participate in our program, to help you to get a glimpse of our strategy and how we approach these exams, because you deserve to pass. You put in a lot of hard work. You felt defeated. But before you study again, let tonight be the moment you decide to trust yourself again. I believe that you just needed a quiet place to rise, to grow your confidence, to hear some of the things that you're saying to yourself and notice them so that you can stop the loop and to get very clear on what your next move is. I believe that if you start now, while your momentum is already wheels in place, you'll do much better. I'd love it if it was our program that you chose as a worthy program to enroll in to get back toward your goal. But regardless of if you choose ours or not, I know that this conversation is the beginning of the momentum you may need. As always, I'm thankful for you watching our sessions, being here with us. It means the world to me for you to subscribe and share and like. It gets out the reach of our conversations with fellow educators that are having these loops of statements said to them. Whether it's on paper, it's in social media, or somebody saying it out loud. You need strategy to get where you're going. You're on a mission to achieve a goal, and we're here to help you. If you want more details about our walk through the competency session that's coming up, please visit our website at ttinnovate.com. We would love it if you would engage with us on our social media platforms at TT Innovates. And I'm grateful, as always, that you have chose to spend this time with me. I bid you farewell for tonight and see you again next Monday as we go through the competencies, go through the strategic, effective practices, and help you, really empower you to walk into your next season, your next goal. All right, everyone. Have a great evening.